So yeah, Extradimensional Crisis is now here, and all the cards have been released, so let's have a look at them. And maybe talk a bit about the more interesting ones. So this first card is just a simple Patil, nothing too crazy. Then a Lilligant as its evolution does 60 damage, is actually quite a lot for a second evolution. Rowlet, another Rowlet, it has Furry attack, which does, or Fury attack, not Furry, which does 30 damage maximum. It flips 3 coins, not too bad. This is an interesting one. This is Dartrix, a different version of Dartrix. Does 20 damage to any of your opponent's Pokemon, so you can even attack benched Pokemon, etc. Then we have the new Decidueye. It's basically also sniping Pokemon on the bench and does 70 damage. So yeah, if you want to snipe people, then this is probably the deck to play. And there we have Buzzwole, and the Buzzwole is what we expected. If you play against the computer, it has an interesting deck with 2 Buzzwole and Celesteela, which is able to get around this. During your next turn, this Pokemon can't use Big Beat, so you can just swap out to the other Buzzwole and back, and that actually means that it doesn't really do anything. So yeah, this is Pheromosa, attacks does 20 damage to one of your opponent's benched. Pretty basic, nothing too crazy. Same with Kartana, 40 damage. And Blasphalon, which does 70 damage to itself. Still not sure how that is gonna play out in actual decks. Mantine, 50 damage for 2 energy, pretty cool. Carnivine, Carvana, which does 20 damage, nothing too crazy again. Sharpedo, flip a coin, if heads discard a random energy from your opponent's active. Kinda could be good, but I don't see too many use cases. Shinx with just basic 20 damage. Lucario, which does 50. And then the Luxray, which has Intimidating Fang. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, attacks used by your opponent's active do -20. Okay, so if it is in the active, it does have to be in the active for that to work. So that is something to keep in mind. Otherwise, it would have been very overpowered, actually. Here's Blitzel, 40 damage, nothing crazy. Headbull does 70 for Zebstrika. Amolga does 30. And Tapu Koko, which is already the one that we saw in the release trailer. Same with Xurkitree, we have seen that guy before. And Zeraora, which does at the end of your turn take an energy from your energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon. Pretty solid, I think, with knowing what is coming up, which is a new electric type item. Okay, so this Clefairy is just 10 damage. Nothing too crazy. Clefable does 60, also nothing crazy. Phantom, so for 30, and this one I haven't seen, Trevenant, 70 damage for 3 energies. So yeah, again, nothing crazy. I feel like that is basically the entire card set so far. It's just pretty basic standard stuff. Once during your turn you may put a random Pokemon from your deck into your hand. That is pretty good, I would say. Playing Shinotic in Psychic type decks is pretty nice. A Meditite, which flips a coin. If heads, the attack does 20 more damage. Not bad for a basic. And then Medicham, which does 50 for 1 energy, is also not bad if you are running Lucario. Baltoy does 30. What does this guy do? Claydol. Pokemon, both of yours and your opponents can't be healed. So against the heavy healing type decks like grass type decks, this might be good. Though it has a weakness to grass, of course. Then the new Rockruff, which does 40 damage, combined with the Lycan Rocky Axe, which does 130, discards 1 energy from this Pokemon. So, and it is a fighting type energy that it discards. Kinda interesting. I think it is just a very standard EX card. A new Pessimian. If Pessimian is on your bench, this does 40 more damage. So in the Pessimian EX deck, this might be pretty cool. Though it says if Pessimian is on your bench. So I think this means that if it is a Pessimian EX, it might not work. Alright, so we have Sandygast, very standard again, and Palo Sand, which means that your opponent's card can't retreat next turn. That is pretty good. For 90 damage and 130 HP, but it takes 4 energy, so yeah, not sure how good that is. Alola Meowth, Metal, discard a random Pokemon tool from your opponent's hand. I think this is pretty good, actually. I think that is gonna see a little bit of play. And then Alolan Persian, flip a coin if heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. It's also not too bad, actually. So, yeah, this line might see a little bit of play. You have Sandile, which does 20 damage. We have Krokorok, which does 40 damage. Then we have Crocodile. Flip 3 coins for each head. A card is chosen at random from your opponent's hand. Your opponent reveals that card and shuffles it into their deck. So you can disrupt someone's hand quite a bit with that. Nihilego, we have seen this, of course, which I think is going to be pretty powerful with Clodsire. And then we have Guzzlord, pretty good card. Poipole, we've also seen, and its evolution, Nagandal, which does your opponent's active is now poisoned. Now this, with the Nihilego, is actually pretty good. I think that is a really nice, solid combination. Alolan Diglett, which has the Alolan Dugtrio EX card. Flip 3 coins, this attack does 60 damage for each heads. So also not too bad. Aeron and Laron, very standard. And then we have Aggron, which is also a pretty standard third evolution. Giga Impact has 150 damage. During your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. So that is a pretty big downside, but it has 160 HP. That is a lot. Ferroseed and its Ferrothorn evolution. If this Pokemon is in the active spot and is damaged by an attack from your opponent Pokemon, do 20 damage to the attacking Pokemon. So basically the same as Drodigan. And then Stakataka and Lillipup, very standard stuff. Herdier is also very standard. And then Stoutland. Guard Visage. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, attacks used by your opponent's active Pokemon cost 1 more energy. That seems pretty good. So it takes another turn for your opponent to set up. So it gives you a turn to do 70 damage, basically. And then this card, like this card is so weird to me. As it takes 2 flip coins to, and if they are both heads, your opponent's Pokemon is just knocked out. Doesn't matter how much HP it has, but you do need 2 heads. So yeah, that is gonna be difficult, of course. but I think it has some very good use cases. Sylvali. If you play the supporter card from your hand during this turn, this deck does 50 more damage. This is pretty good as well, I think. Especially with running a lot of support cards. And then Celesteela, I think, is also a must-have in a Buzzwole deck. Then we go to the items. You can use this card only if your opponent hasn't gotten any points. So, opponent doesn't need to have any points. And then during your opponent's next turn, if all your Ultra Beasts take 20 less damage. Pretty nice. Ooh, a Repel. Switch out your opponent's active basic Pokemon to the bench. Your opponent chooses the new active. So this is a very cheap... Damn, okay, so this is a very cheap... a little bit worse Sabrina, basically. But a lot of EX cards are also basic. So, Darkrai Giratina. This is pretty solid, actually, I think. Then you have Electric Cord. If the electric Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active and is knocked out by damage from an attack from the opponent's Pokemon, move 2 electric energy from the Pokemon and attach 1 energy to each of your 2 benched Pokemon. Attach Electric Cord to one of your Pokemon that doesn't have a Pokemon tool attached to it. That makes sense. Could be useful. Not sure how useful it is going to be though. Beast Tide. Attacks used by Ultra Beasts. This card is attached to do 10 damage to your opponent's active for each point that you have gotten. So basically this does 20 extra damage if you already have 2 points. It's kind of a little bit of a snowball card. This card with the new type null cards is pretty nice. Put 1 random type null or Sylvali from your deck into your hand. So you remember it did 50 extra damage to anything if you played a support card. Well, this is basically how that works. Then we have Looker. Your opponent reveals all of the supporter cards in their deck. You may play only 1 supporter card during your turn. Nothing too crazy. This one we have seen. So let's look at the full art. This is a really nice card. I really like this Rowlet. Then we have the Pheromosa that I actually got from a pack already. And the Blasphalon that we have seen before. A Alola Meowth just chilling out. That's really lovely. Really cute. A Sylvali card that looks pretty cool. Pretty nice. I think these cards are really cool though. Like, look at this. This art is amazing. And there is a Buzzwole EX. I don't like that card as much actually. And we move into a Tapu Koko. Lycanroc. These are all the 2-star cards. I'm not a huge fan of those. Gastlord also has one. There's like no actual full arts in this set. Like only 3 or 4. Dugtrio. Galadian. Where's the rainbow cards? Looker. And Lusamine. That's a pretty nice one. There we are. The rainbow full arts. These are usually pretty good. So this one looks pretty cool. Then we have a Lycanroc one. Pretty nice artwork. I like it. Pretty clean. Ooh. Okay, this one is really nice. I like this. This reminds me of the Darkrai one. Very, very nice. Okay. Alolan Dugtrio. Also pretty cute. And Ooh, this is the immersive? Holy shit. Okay, this looks really cool. I would love to get this immersive. And then I think there's a bunch of shinies. So yeah, just shiny Growlithe, shiny Arcanine. These are cards from the other, um, the earlier sets basically. So there's a few of those here. Frogadier, Greninja. Shiny Greninja is a really nice one. Jinx, Pidgeotto, Pidgeot, Aerodactyl, Celebi EX. Okay, so Celebi EX has a shiny. That is nice because then you have a little bit more chance to have one of those. Arcanine, Aerodactyl EX, and Pidgeot EX, and then the crown card is Nihilego. That is interesting.